So we'll begin. Morning all. My name's Nathan Jones. I'm the account manager at Buddy Media in the recently opened UK office in London. We've got about 4 offices now. Our headquarters originally based in New York, opened an office in San Francisco and recently in Singapore as well. I've been at the company for about 5 months, which in this sort of industry is some sort of service. And I'm here to talk through the first 4 sessions, which focuses around the Facebook newsfeed optimization. We've got a further 3 sessions which are done by my colleagues Luca Bonini and Erin Leahy, and they're going to cover off a playbook for the global Facebook strategy, best practices for cross-platform social strategy, and social commerce best practices. So in terms of the essence for this first presentation, it's really just covering off the basics. There's some things that you may be already familiar with, but hopefully there's some new parts that sort of stir the old grey matter. So if we start off for the agenda, we're going to look into the Facebook newsfeed overall and the changes that have happened in October. What is EdgeRank and the sort of mathematics behind how posts are prioritised onto your newsfeed. Highlighted stories and factors and how that again, the implications behind that and how the news is distributed across you as a user. Best practices for optimal newsfeed visibility. And then finally, how to determine if your strategy is working overall. So if we start off with the first one, which is the newsfeed. The recent changes have been the difference between most recent and highlighted stories. So we're going to take a look at the first slide here. On the left-hand side, you've got recent stories and highlighted stories. Now these screen grabs were taken within seconds of each other. But the content that's displayed to me as a user is significantly different. On the left-hand side, recent stories is quite easy to explain as to what that is. That is stories that appear in your newsfeed in chronological order as they were posted, regardless of their content, my affinity with the user that's posted it, etc. Highlighted stories are displayed to me, and it's really dependent upon your usage. And it's been created to help you get the most or the best updates from your friends. And this is determined by lots of factors, including your relationship with the person, the brand that's posting it, how many comments and likes it's received, and the type of story that's posted. So whether that post includes photos or videos and how many likes and comments that's got will determine how high up in the newsfeed that will display. It's really great for you, for a user that's not dipping in and out of Facebook on a regular basis, sort of every 2 days, 3 days, etc., to ensure that they're getting the most relevant content to their screen. So with that, with the highlighted stories, there is an element of control. So you can dictate what kind of content, from whom, and how often you see them. And it's quite an easy, simplistic way of selecting. So you just select from the top right-hand corner whether a post has come from one of your friends, and you select whether you want to highlight that story or not. Therefore, then Facebook will start to learn over time as to whether that content is relevant for you and whether how often you see that. And then briefly, the differences between the subscriptions options from a user and a fan base, and a fan page, sorry. So users have a host of options really to choose from. They can either highlight the story or unhighlight it, or moderate how often they get the update. So if your friend is a regular status update poster, whether you just get their status updates or whether you get their posts include videos or photos or every other day, etc. So you can really control the amount of content that you're receiving from your friends. In terms of brands, you can either opt in or you can opt out. You can either unhighlight the story or you can highlight it. So EdgeRank. EdgeRank is something that Facebook use, and it's, as I say, it's how it's determined how you see the content that's posted by your fellow colleagues or friends. So not to really blast you with such horrible looking maths first thing in the morning, but this is EdgeRank in a nutshell, and it's sort of split into three of the main formulas, three main parts, sorry. So it has an affinity score between viewing users and edge creators. It has the weight, so it determines how popular that post is to whether it's displayed to you as a user. And that's used either as the creative or creative in the web section. And the time factor as well, how relevant or how fresh that content is as to whether you're sort of seeing the content in its real time. So really, what is Facebook? Facebook's EdgeRank. So this is according to Facebook. This is their real sort of definition. So EdgeRank is based on an algorithm that uses factors such as how many friends are commenting on a post to aggregate content that will find it interesting. It then displays the stories based on their relevance rather than chronological order. So it goes back to that highlighting section that we've covered off in the first section as opposed to the most recent stories. So what does that mean, and how can you really control that? So if we begin to break that down, it's any item that appears within the newsfeed, such as a status update or a video, is called an object. And then any action taken upon that object, such as a like or a comment or a post, is called the edge. And the two of those really combined give you that overall weight. And then that's just dependent upon how that type of object appears on your Facebook page. Coupled with the original sort of mathematics behind it, you've got the affinity. So it's broken up into three main parts really. So affinity is how well you're connected you are with that particular audience. You can see in action, you can see this is an action as general Facebook users share that information and how often they interact with a particular brand. How many friends do you have in common with that post? And then the weight, how many people are sort of interacting with that post and what type of interaction that is, whether it's a comment, whether it's a like, etc. What kind of comments, what kind of content is it? So photos that posts that tend to have photos or videos tend to have a little bit more credence in terms of their stickiness, and help propel that up the sort of the EdgeRank system. And then you've got really the relevance, which is how timely that post is. So if it's a post that's sort of 3 or 4 days old versus something that's sort of 3 or 4 hours old, that's all taken up into the mix and then displayed or fed back to you, so the content is pushed back onto your newsfeed appropriately. So if we move into the highlighted stories factors, Facebook obviously processes a lot of information on an hourly basis, and EdgeRank is obviously used to help facilitate the quality of that data and the information and how it's sort of displayed to you on your newsfeed, so you can act accordingly. There are a few tricks obviously that we will cover off later in the presentation which will help you optimise your presence in terms of stimulating social debate and conversation with the users. But if we start off with the analogy of Facebook, say, is a cloud and it's sort of raining kind of content, etc., and you've got various status updates, comments, posts, videos, photos, events from your friends, from things that you've liked. How do you see that content? And where does it go? So all of the content will filter down, and your bucket essentially is your Facebook page, and how do you sort of see that content display onto it? How does it get lost, and how do we sort of decide what and how it sort of displays onto your Facebook feed? So if we revisit the formula, you've obviously got the the relevance, the affinity, and the weight of the post. And that's then how you start to sort of granulate and sort of get that data specifically onto your Facebook newsfeed. What we've also found is, and what we also suggest, using a mixture of both status updates, but also attaching photos or videos, or encouraging sort of users to interact with that particular post, will pack on the pounds and increase the opportunity to really interact and improve the chances for the user to engage and comment on the posts to push up the overall Edge ranking score. So if we go back to the bucket, you sort of start to see that things like such as events, such as videos, messages, likes start to get heavier presence on, which then sort of slide down into the bucket. So if you have a look at the sort of types of what we can do, and how we can sort of stimulate the conversation with the users, there's a couple of tricks really that we can sort of do. You can post games and trivia and ask debates, such as the Major League one, soccer one, who's going to be top of the MLS league, share your picks or your vote for who do you think it is, so you start that social debate. You can also ask with a very generic question, and Unilever did that with, do you know what country Magnum was first launched in? And it just sort of starts that overall comments and the likes, and quite quickly you can gather momentum, which would then propel your Edge ranking score in an upward direction. Another key thing, which also sort of prompts or pushes up the Edge ranking thing, is to interact with the fans. So a few of our clients use it obviously as a service area, so users will make suggestions and then clients will respond. Taking the time to really directly respond to users builds up that affinity, and they feel like there is somebody at the other side of the Facebook page and it's not just a destination where they can just leave comments, etc. Incorporate some of the wall apps, so you can direct traffic in and around the way that you onto your tabs, but also use the polls and the applications that are quite freely available on the newsfeed, the status updates. So you can ask polls. Incorporate relevant photos, really, what we've sort of, or relevant bits and pieces that are happening in the world, really. So this is something that Time Out did, London magazine, to sort of tell everybody in London, and we were very targeted in the way that they did this, that the Albert Bridge was now open. So it's you know, simple, it's effective, and posts tend to have that sort of sticky factor that propel your Edge ranking further up the leaderboard. And then you can be relevant with your events, really. I mean, Helly Hansen, for example, are starting to promote a daily offer in the run-up to Christmas. So they'll post out stuff that changed on a daily basis, which will encourage users to be directed to a point-of-sale website so they can redeem a discount on their daily offer. Where possible, incorporate videos. They work extremely well. The user can view them within the wall. This example from Marks and Spencer's again was something that's relevant and it's timely. And are you a fan of mulled wine? How to make it from a chef? All the users have to do is click the video and it's prompted within their news stream. They're not directed anywhere else. They can watch that content, they can share that with their friends, etc. They can comment on it or like it. Content also, be aware of what time and when you're posting. It's not necessarily, we found that posting just between the hours of 9 to 5, can sometimes get lost within the mud of many messages that are going out. So be sort of aware of the sensitivity of when you're posting out content. So a couple of brands in the US, restaurant brands, have posted sort of slightly outside of sort of the 9 to 5 time zone. And they found that by doing that, they've had a 20% higher engagement rate, so they'll post offers for the following day. So that it can be redeemed the following day. So we've obviously talked about the different types of content and the timing, but let's now really get into the data behind this. So I think if we have a sort of a show of hands, I suppose as marketing teams really on how, you may have been asked how many times you should be posting a day. It's sort of when should we be posting? How often should we be posting, and what should I say? Are all questions that obviously marketeers face. And you want to be sharing and sort of using the tactics from the previous sort of section to be posting content that engages with your fans, to get that stickiness, to increase your edge ranking, so that you don't end up with your fan base sharing that with one or two people. You really want them to sort of propel your communications to sort of spread that message and viralise it to their network of friends. And that's how the cycle really sort of continues to grow. So we did some research earlier on in the year which sort of analysed sort of 200 of the world's largest brands over a 2-week period, to sort of help understand the basics being posted and provide some insight really on the trends and posting techniques which increase performance over a particular time. Whilst this wasn't really limited to a specific sector or demographic or region, I will caveat this by sort of saying that you know your brand's best, but feel free to try out these points. So one of the things that we found worked really quite well was keeping your messages short. Posts that were sort of 80 characters or less in length had a 27% higher engagement. So you can include the photos in there. Long prose, large paragraphs tended to be quite off-putting for users. So use a mixture really of the both if that's your tactic. But as I say, the shorter the message in relativeness, the higher the engagement. Also beware of URL shorteners. Our research found that when you use the full URL, we found that it was going to be 3 times higher engagement than posts that used a sort of URL shortener. But shorteners are commonplace now in most of the sort of and social communications. But if it's not suitable to show the full URL because of its overall length, then we encourage you really to use the branded version or a branded version of a shortener if possible. This is really because then the user gets a sense of where they're actually potentially being directed to. Something that's quite encrypted, such as the ones on the sort of the left-hand side, users sort of tend to find that as a little bit of a hurdle. They don't know where they're going, they don't know the sort of how authentic that link is. So we've tended to encourage users to, or sort of brands to use branded URL shorteners. We also did a study on when's best, and again this is not sort of focused on a particular sector, but the research sort of tended to find that Thursday and Friday were the most sort of responsive of days, the lead up to the weekend. And they sort of tended to provide the highest engagement rate. And then keywords. What words were most effective in the posts, and how and what drove the likes, the comments on the Facebook wall. We tended to find that things such as event, winner, offer had the highest like rate variance and comment rate variance. than things that said things like sale or save. Those sorts of messages tended to not resonate that particularly well with audiences, and were less of a trigger and a call to action. Other tactics. Questions really do work. When you sort of ask the audience to participate really, and use when, where, would, should, really drive engagements. Avoid asking why. That tends to be something that users then don't particularly get involved with. And obviously ultimately what we're trying to do is get fans to comment and like on the posts, to share that content. So with that in mind, obviously with all of those sort of tips and tricks sort of absorbed, how do you really sort of get a sense as to how the post can influence your fan base? And how is it, how can you assess whether it's working? So you obviously need to keep a close eye on your Facebook insights, which have been improved recently to give a marketeer a greater degree of understanding as to what's happening on the page, and less just purely on the demographic build of the page and where the fans are based, etc., and the ballpark age groups that they fall within. So something that's prominent now on all of the pages when you visit them is the talked about this element, which sits underneath the total number of fans. Now this really gives a very quick reference as to how interactive that page has been, or how people are engaging with that page over a 7-day period. So this records anything that users have either liked that page, whether they've commented on a page, on a particular post, whether they've shared content, etc. So it's an aggregated number, so you can sort of get a sense as to if this page has got 12 million fans, how active it is. Is it stimulating? Is it driving stickiness? Are the users propelling the content that's being posted, and so that you can get a sense quite quickly as to whether your methods of posting are working. So yeah, this will break this down. So it's either talking about this section includes people who liked your page, or commented, or shared your page post, answered a question you may have asked, or responded to an event, mentioned your page, tagged your page in a photo, or checked in or recommended your place. So it sort of is an aggregated figure across the past sort of 7 days. And then this can be broken down really by post. So again, you can then assess the post sort of strength on an individual basis. So whereas the one on the right hand side, as we said, is an all-encompassing figure for the collective Facebook page and what's happening. The page talking about this that sits underneath each of the posts when you log in as an admin is specific to that particular post. So it's someone that's either commented, liked it, or seen it. So to give you sort of more granular data on that, it's the commented areas, it's the shared the post, it's the answered a question, and responded to an event. And then you've got the people reach, which sits alongside it, which is the overall number of people that have seen that post. So again, you get to see the engagement figure based purely on that post that have seen it. Another interesting section, which is found in the insights, is the demographics. So previously on the left-hand side was a breakdown really of who your audience is and what and who, and where they're based locale-wise, and what their sort of and their language, etc. So you can get a sense, ballpark region, as to whether your page was particularly female orientated. You probably already know that by a sense of what your brand is anyway, but it gives you a breakdown really of the age and how the communications are working, etc., and who's liked the page. What you're seeing on the right hand side is the same, but it's mirrored based on the interactions and the engagements. So you can actually see whether, and in this case this was for an FMCG client, that if you have a look at the audience for the 30 to 17 year olds, that sort of makes up just under 5% of the overall audience. But in terms of the interaction on the page, they're generating around about 17% of that interaction, which is more than the audience share really. Then you've got the 18 to 24 year olds, which is the lion's share of the brand's fan base, but they're sort of mirroring really the communications and acting upon the communications that are being sent out by the brand. And then finally you've got the Facebook Insights People Reach chart. So this is sort of broken down into three main sections. You've got organic, the paid and the viral section. So organic is the number of unique people who saw the content about your page in the newsfeed, ticker or page overall. Then you've got the paid, so the number of unique people who saw an ad or sponsored story that you may have pointed out, that may have pointed to your page over, again, the same period. So you can define this over, I think, it's a 3-month window maximum. Then you've got the viral section, which is the number of unique people who saw the content from a published story posted by their friends. So you can get a sense of how your user base is helping propel traffic to your site. So then you can drill that down, whether a particular post was a resultant for that, whether a particular viral post, did it have the photo, did it have the video, so that you can then begin to formulate your strategy over time as to how best to publish your content. So 5 other things really that you should are important really to media metrics that you should really be tracking, that we've considered from a Buddy Media perspective, is the like rate. Now, like rate doesn't have as much sort of stickiness as the comment section overall, but occasionally you can encourage actions, and once in a while you can be really blatant and obvious with your fans, and this can work really well in a short-term boost on getting the fans to interact with a particular post. Argos, for example, just posted out, and they normally sort of get around about, I would say, about 500 likes, 50, 60 comments per post. They went with a simple messaging of, only 3 weeks until Christmas Day, click here if you like it, click like if you're really excited about this. Now this doesn't really offer any value to the user, but it just prompts and it gets them to sort of interact with that post and begin to it's on a short-term basis. It boosts the edge ranking thing, so that subsequent messages sort of get cut through. And on this particular post, from the fan base, around about 25,000, they ended up with 3,400 likes. And again, going on the comment rate, encourage interaction. So this is something that Sports Nations did for the Monday night game. So sort of asking people to predict the halftime score, just to spark social debate, etc. on that page, and comments carry more weight than likes. It has a longer benefit long term. So this one generated sort of 6,915 comments, and this is something that really is generated over a sort of a window of maybe about 5 hours. And then you've got the engagement rate and the content. And Gucci do this really well. They're posting pictures of an album of latest shoe releases, and instantly within them doing that, the content of the photos help sort of drive the stickiness, but they're not, they're not offering any value to the particular users, but they're just sort of showing a product line, and they're resonating well with their audience. And 9,200 people, 9,700 people are liking these and starting comments. Where can they get these? And then as the brand, they will then respond to the fans, so they get that sort of personal touch. So this is a really great sort of short-term way of sort of boosting the Edge rank, so that any of your posts really are propelled as high as possible, so the user is inclined to like them and see them. And then something else you really want to sort of pay quite close attention to is the impressions. Really drill down into each of the posts that you're publishing out on a weekly basis. Assess what you're doing. Use the insights tool. See what's working. Tracking versus the impressions versus your audience size, and what kind of the demographic are interacting. And then the feedback score, which is the number of comments versus it's the comments and likes per impression. So again, that sort of gauges your stickiness, really. That sort of, in a nutshell, covers off sort of the basics really on the news feed and how to optimise. I think we've got a little bit of time for questions if anyone has anything that they want to ask overall. But I mean, we as Buddy Media are in the Houseman building down next door, so feel free. If you don't have any questions, to visit where the rest of the team will be based. Yes?
Do you find that there is much geographic difference in how people respond? You were talking about what are things that appeal to people most. Have you looked at whether that varies by country at all?
Some, yeah. Again, the strategies are really just does depend on the brand. Overall, I mean, most of the time it's the photos and the videos, they sort of tend to carry more credence, really. When you're offering a particular offer, we found that if it's isolated to a particular region or a locale, then it's beneficial to sort of really target those to a smaller area. Yes?
Yeah. Do you think at some point we'll be able to track information at the fan level, meaning that we've got like the overall number of likes that have been generated on your page, or impressions and so on?
Yeah.
But do you think at some point Facebook will let page owners know that you specifically liked post about this specific topic? So this kind of information, more personalized and
yes, so it's more granular. It's difficult to say, really.
I'll take that, if you like.
I think we've got a Facebook.
Hi, yeah, I'm on
person.
Facebook. No, we're not. I think that really goes against our one of our core principles, which is a user-centric privacy model. So the user decides essentially who they want to share that information with, and we want to make sure that everything is based around the user rather than based around the brands. And it's certainly not something we're planning on doing anytime